Hello and welcome to World Talks with me, Ashim Kumar. The conflict in the Middle East is widening again. Yemen's Houthi rebels have attacked Saudi oil tankers. The United States continues strikes against Iran, and Tehran is threatening retaliation against Western interests. Are we moving towards a broader regional war? Well, joining me is Heinz Gärtner. He's Professor of Political Science at the University of Vienna. Professor, welcome back, and thank you very much for taking the time.
Good evening. You're welcome.
Thank you. So let's start with the Houthis. They've shifted their approach away from attacking any vessels connected with Israel to now attacking Saudi-linked vessels. What's happening there?
We have two different conflicts in parallel. And there is, of course, this conflict between the Houthis and Saudi Arabia going back to the civil war, but also when Saudi Arabia attacked Sana'a, the capital of Yemen, in 2015. There was a ceasefire in 22. And a couple of days ago, Saudi Arabia attacked the airport of Sana'a because Iran used it for civilian purposes. And so now we have this conflict re-emerging between Houthis and then Saudi Arabia, and with already some involvement with Iran. But this conflict is not yet directly combined, linked to the war between the US and Iran. But it has the potential to do so.
But Iran has been supporting the Houthis in their, if I can call it, mischief making in terms of attacking various vessels. What makes you think that this situation with Saudi is any different? I mean, Iran has attacked Saudi; it's attacked other countries in the Middle East already. So why aren't they using the Houthis as they have done in the past?
Yes, that's true. Absolutely, Iran supported the Houthis, but not just now, all along, and also during the conflict, during the war after the attack by Saudi Arabia on Sana'a. Iran provided weapons to the Houthis. So Iran thinks the Houthis are somehow a second line of defense. But the Houthis do not have the capabilities as the Hezbollah in Lebanon has. So, of course, the Houthis use the support of Iran, but it acts more or less also independently. So there is not only the command by Iran that the Houthis would do so. So there is, of course, this local, individual, bilateral conflict between Saudi Arabia and Sana'a, the capitals, that means, which is now occupied by the Houthis.
Okay, Professor, but President Trump recently released a statement saying that, if there were any further attacks by the Houthis on Saudi vessels, then he would attack Iran, in other words, implying that Iran was directly involved. So you believe he's misunderstood the situation?
I guess a little bit. So for President Trump, everything is very simple. There is one enemy, and there are the allies and friends. And the enemy now is Iran, and everything what is in conflict with the US is the fault of Iran. So it's not as simple as President Trump thinks. So retaliation for Houthi attacks on Iran might not have that effect what he thinks.
Okay, I'd like to zoom out for a second, Professor, and ask your view on the big picture in the region. So, Hezbollah and Hamas have always been Iranian proxies, have been used to stir up trouble around where they are, so in Israel predominantly. And the Houthis as well. What's that relationship like at the moment? I mean, Can Iran afford to continue to support these proxies in the situation it currently is in? I mean, it can't sell its oil very easily, its revenues are declining, it's being bombed all the time. Is it still as influential on its proxies as it has been in the past?
There has been a limited influence already in the past. And as I said, these conflicts have its origins in itself. So the conflict in Yemen goes back to civil war. In Lebanon, it goes back to the 80s. So this was a conflict between Hezbollah and Israel. So, of course, then Iran used and seized the opportunity and also tried to build up their proxies, or what the Iranians think, which is their second line of defense. Whether Iran can do it in the future, I guess there's already reduced support, direct support to these militias. However, Iran wants to keep the option open if the strait in Mad al-Madab, that's the Red Sea Strait, if that should be closed as well as the Strait of Hormuz, then of course Iran would put pressure on the Houthis to do so. I don't know whether that's going to work, but of course Iran wants to keep this option open to choke off the other energy line, the oil supplies.
Okay, so if that is a possible plan, what are the objectives of Iran in doing this?
Iran wants to have a leverage. So the Strait of Hormuz is not so much a red line, it's a leverage, because it's the only leverage they have against these big powers, the post-nuclear powers, more or less the US and also Israel. And in the past, President Trump attacked Iran during the negotiations and also reneged of agreements like the JCPOA. So, and Iran had nothing to retaliate. So Iran wants to keep this control of the Strait of Hormuz as a leverage in order to be able to retaliate, and maybe it wants to build up another a means of leverage in the Red Sea. I guess that's the objective of Iran.
Yes, but leverage for what? I mean, what does that mean? Basically, the attack was triggered by Iran's closeness to producing a nuclear weapon. Are you saying that Iran just wants a leverage so that they can go back to doing that?
No, it was because after the President Trump in 2018 left the JCPOA, Iran couldn't do anything about it because also international law did not work, and because it was based on international law, the agreement, and also during the negotiations in 2025 and 2026, Israel and Iran attacked, Israel and the US attacked Iran. So, and basically Iran had not much to retaliate except its drones and some missiles. So in order to have a security guarantee, that's a security guarantee for Iran, it will keep this leverage. And of course, that's what the US doesn't want Iran to do, because the US wants to open up the freedom of navigation, as it says, and Iran wants to keep control. And that's the contradiction what we have. And the US is not able now to open the Strait of Hormuz by force, because Iran can always stop it with a few, close it again with a few drones. And Iran cannot give up its leverage. So we have a stalemate war here, and only another agreement back to the Memorandum of Understanding could resolve this conflict. Otherwise, it will go on for a long time.
And what would that understanding look like, Professor?
To my mind, the easiest way to come to an agreement is to start with a nuclear file, with a nuclear issue, because a lot has been prepared already in the previous negotiations, GCPOA Vienna negotiations in 2021, in Geneva 25 and 26. So there's maybe 85% has been negotiated already. Even so, President Trump will not admit it, because he's saying that the previous deal was the worst deal, whatever you call it. So that would be easy, and maybe there could be a momentum for the other conflicts. So there could be talks in parallel, also for the Strait of Hormuz, because both sides eventually have an interest to resolve this conflict. But the problem, of course, is sequencing. With what to start with, nuclear file or Strait of Hormuz or Lebanon, because the memorandum of understanding very prominently puts Lebanon in the first place. But I think there are four issues which should be discussed in parallel. But the real problem is where to start with, because there's always the tendency to use one issue to blackmail or to put pressure on the other side not to continue.
Well, that is a characteristic of international geopolitics, I would suggest, from many sides. Now,
absolutely.
You know, now Iran isn't making any friends in the region either. It's attacking Middle Arab countries around it. What is the aim of that?
Iran announced already at the beginning that it will widen the conflict if it is attacked. Iran said it would only attack the military bases in the neighboring states, the military bases of the US, what it started out with. But now, of course, it is expanding also on attacks on infrastructure. And the more the US is attacking Iran's infrastructure, energy, and resources and pipelines and grids, then Iran will retaliate with strikes on civilian infrastructure in the neighboring states. However, there is geography, and the Gulf states and Iran, to some extent, will have to get along with each other, including Israel. I have to say there have to be regional arrangements after the war is over. And then President Trump now is pressuring Saudi Arabia to join the Abraham Accords, which means recognition of Israel. Of course, Saudi Arabia could do it in order to get support for its civilian nuclear program. Saudi Arabia could say, yes, we recognize Israel, but only in the borders of 67. The Arab Peace Plan of 2002 already stresses this. And I don't understand why Iran could not do the same and say we recognize Israel in the borders from 67. So that would make the case also for a Palestinian state and for a two-state solution. So that would be a basis for regional cooperation.
Well, let's hope the conversation eventually gets around to that, Professor Gärtner. Unfortunately, we have to end our conversation here, but thank you, as always, for joining us and sharing your analysis with our audience. Bye-bye now. And that brings us to the end of this episode of World Talks. Don't go away, lots more coming up. Goodbye.